another exciting Saturday evening. And I'm Sunandan Chaudhury, and this is the new episode of Officially Unofficial, the other side of a successful leader. And of course, I have my main man with me, who I fondly call Anu. And as you guys would know, Dr. Anurag Batra, the evergreen, ever-charming chairman and editor-in-chief of Businessworld and Exchange for Media. Hi, Anu.
Hi. So I don't know how to deal with such high praise. My go-to move is always kind of return the favor. That way, it works out. When Sue, over here, isn't this hosting this wonderful show a bit like, putting up a show, and the audience must know that Sue, while he's not hosting this show, is a well-accomplished and very well-reputed headhunter. He calls it executive search, but I call that industry jargon. You know me, I like to simplify things.
No, take a look, yeah. Look at me. Can you see how I'm blushing, right now?
Right. So I'm not gonna lie, this is not how I expected the show to start. Speaking of which, how should we start this thing?
Well, you know what? Let's start with what have you learned? Well, one thing that you've learned in the last first two episodes that we have done.
Just one thing?
Okay. Two things, okay. Two things from the two episodes.
Okay, easy peasy. Neelam loves her golden retriever and Shiv loves the Beatles. That's what I learned.
But what about leadership related? How about something leadership related?
See, when you asked me, you didn't specify, Sue. Now that you asked me...
Okay. Name two leadership lessons that you've learned from the first two episodes.
Okay, so the first two things I can think of are empathy and authenticity. To lead others, you have to understand them and you have to walk the talk.
But you know what? That's easily the most profound thing I've ever heard you say. Yeah.
What can I say? These guests are making me smarter every episode. What about you, Sue?
Oh, well, I think I've always been smart.
Oh, no, Sue. I meant, what are the two leadership lessons you have learned so far from these two episodes?
Well, for me, I think it's fearlessness and perseverance, A man or woman who has boldly, need to go where no man or woman has gone before. To achieve greatness, true greatness lies in the unknown.
I think, Sue, you've been watching too much of Star Trek. Star Trek, to boldly go where no man has gone before, is the most famous line in Star Trek.
I don't have any idea what you're talking about.
So it's a perfect segue to bring in our next guest, who will probably tell you the same thing in few seconds. So today we have someone who is not just authentic, fearless, but a person who understands relationships at home and in office, Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik.
I was wondering whether I was in the right web seminar.
Well, thank you so much for being there. And of course, Annurag, why don't you give us a quick introduction?
Yeah, before we get started, Bhaskar, let's give a brief introduction to Bhaskar. Though really you don't need one, you don't need any introduction. Bhaskar is an electrical engineer from IIT Kanpur. Even today and in early 70s when he passed out, it was the number one engineering institution, and overall, if you made it to IIT Kanpur, it proved that you were the super bright. The most coveted place for electrical engineering in those days. He's currently senior advisor, Rothschild and Company, and is also a board member and independent director on TCNS Clothing Limited. He's been earlier former chairperson of Microsoft India, under whose leadership Microsoft grew leaps and bounds. He's a former board member of State Bank of India. So over to you.
Bhaskar, Anu and I were, I think he was referring to Star Trek. And I know that, you are a sci-fi movie freak, or you enjoy sci-fi movie and literature. But one thing, does sci-fi literature movies, does that make us a better leader or even a better human being or a person? What's your view?
So I think there are many lessons to be learned from the sci-fi literature as well as the sci-fi, movies. My favorite sci-fi movie was Star Trek, and the quote which you guys started off with, to boldly go where no one has been before. Actually, the original Star Trek actually used the word no man, but then in the subsequent Star Trek, The Next Generation, they actually changed it to no one, because by then diversity had become very, very important, especially gender. So therefore they changed that. And frankly, in the third Star Trek, the captain of the Star Trek Voyager was actually a lady captain. So, they went from no man to no one, and then actually had a captain who was a lady. So, if you want to think of one of the lessons, it's about diversity. I think in all of these three, different Star Treks, the crew were actually composed of people of various different colors, shapes, and from different kinds of planets. And that's what made them a great team, because they all were very, very skilled in different ways, and they had a different approach from a cultural perspective. So especially when you're talking about going into the unknown, to boldly go where no one has been before, to discover new worlds, new lives, that's what basically all of the Star Trek is about. It's about discovery, and therefore having diversity is very critical. I think the other thing about Star Trek was its emphasis on the captain or the leader. So whether it was Kirk or Jean-Luc Picard or Captain Janeway, all of them basically were the epitome of what you would consider as great leaders. And actually they were all very different in terms of personality. I think the one I liked the most was Captain Jean-Luc Picard. He also reminded me of my past boss in Microsoft, who was also a Frenchman, and his name was what was his name? Anyway, it'll come back to me. But Jean-Luc Picard was what I would consider a kind of leader I would like to actually identify.
Jean-Philippe Courtois.
Yeah, Jean-Philippe Courtois. Jean-Philippe Courtois. Courtois. And this is Jean-Luc Picard. So Picard, basically, I think, what do great leaders do? They provide clarity, they create energy, and they make people successful. And I think, Jean-Luc Picard basically epitomized those three. I think the other big kick which I got out of these science fiction and Star Trek is about the future of technology, and how you can use technology much better in terms of achieving your goals and objectives. So I'll stop there, but I can carry on for hours about this whole theme of science fiction.
Yeah.
I've been reading science fiction, you'll be surprised, from the mid 50s.
Okay.
So clearly you're a Star Trek fan,
So I was gonna ask him whether he's a Star Trek fan or a Star Wars fan. Never both. Which camp? He's already answered that. Maybe it's an exception. Maybe you like both.
Well, actually, I don't mind watching, going through a Star Wars episode. I've seen all of the episodes. But to me, Star Wars is more fantasy. And it's great sitting with a family with popcorn and, watching the movie from end to end. The special effects are fantastic. George Lucas, it's unbelievable. And it takes you into a different, state altogether. Your imagination can go right. So that's what I liked about Star World. But it's not, it's not serious stuff. To me, the Star Treks, where you got a lot more messages on different subjects from Star Trek.
Yeah, I can see your love for Star Trek. But tell me one thing, isn't it similar with brands too? Because consumers often select a brand and swear by it, and it's very difficult to switch allegiance, right? So can a dedicated Apple user turn into a dedicated Android user?
You're talking about technology.
Yep.
And I think, getting used to a specific kind of technology, especially because of the user interfaces, is very challenging. And I've had to do that multiple times in my career. So when we were in Sun Microsystems, Windows was banned. Microsoft was taboo. So therefore you couldn't use anything. So even we had our own email systems, we had our own word processing, spreadsheets, etc. We had the whole works, and we got used to that, using that, because if you've been in Sun for about 12 to 14 years like I was, then you got used to that interface. By the way, the mobile phone came much later, so I'm just talking about traditional desktop interface.
Yeah.
And then when I went to Microsoft, I had to change all over again. And in between, there was a stage in Sun Microsystems where we were allowed to use Apple phones, Apple Macs. So I had switched over to the iPhone. And then when I went to Microsoft, I still remember that one of the first days when I was in Redmond and my phone rang, and it had the typical iPhone, tune.
Yeah.
CFO of Microsoft, the top guy, CFO of Microsoft, another Frenchman, he actually looked at me and he says, "There's a very alien sound in this room." So I showed my iPhone and I said, "I just joined 2 weeks ago and I haven't been issued my new Microsoft phone." So then I had to make the transition all the way back to Windows, on the phone. And I can tell you it was really, really very tough. And I got so used to it after a couple of years. So the short answer to your question, and I would really phrase it more from a technology perspective.
Yeah.
The challenge in technology is once you get used to a certain style of operating, certain means by which you can access information, store information, the sequence of steps which you use, then it's very difficult. And if you were left to your own, you wouldn't. But there are sometimes external pressures which cause you. And I guess from a consumer perspective, it's more or less the same, except perhaps the factors which push you over is if the quality of the product has declined, or if the brand no longer stands for what it is, and therefore you decide to make a change. So therefore, I think brands are not forever. Brands have to woo their customers. Brands have to continue to deliver on the promises and increase the promises, perhaps in terms of their features, their capabilities, and what it means to their consumers.
Yeah.
I think it becomes even more important as we have changing demographics, and especially if you're a global brand, then you have to worry about not just demographics but cultural preferences. So therefore, the challenges for brands to continue to be primary to a particular consumer is very, very is a challenge. And thank God for technology. And thank God for technology. Yes. Now technology enables you to promote a brand for a consumer of one. Previously, you could just have a few set of features and functionality, try and get it through the advertising media. And therefore, a lot of the other reasons why somebody would like a particular brand would get lost. But now you can target a consumer of one.
And more from functional point of view, it's all about navigating, and the new terms of user interface and user experience very much comes into play, right?
Yeah, technology, yes. But, even technology, like, for example, now the Indian government is saying ban all Chinese products. So if you were using your Oppo or any of the other Chinese brand, you got used to it is an Android, but it has a very different kind of a user experience. Because all of them have some sort of customization. Now you're going to be forced to change. My daughter in London, she uses Huawei. So she's saying, what am I going to do? I most probably will have to give up using Huawei. So again, political reasons, cultural reasons. The best example I can think of brands is the Goya controversy in the US, right? So yeah, brands, protecting your brands and fulfilling their promises stuff.
We were talking of brands and sci-fi and things related. Brands are also heroes, and we are going through a superhero craze at the moment. The highest grossing films by a long shot are the superhero movie. Are you a fan?
Yes. You'd be surprised. I was reading Superman comics at the age of 6.
Okay.
Wow. So let me ask you this in a different way. Now, I don't know much about sci-fi as much as you do, but I know that their main characters have a strong personality and they are inspiring and, dare I say, they're charismatic leaders. Can we draw a parallel there with the non-fiction reality that we are currently living in?
in terms of what? I'm sorry,
See, when you talk of sci-fi movies, they're superheroes. They are inspiring, they're charismatic. So do you see that happening in reality also? Do you see superheroes around you?
Yes, you do, but I
real
think
world.
not because they have superpowers, but because I think they add value to who you are as an individual, or to the society, or to things around you. And perhaps you may not get the perfect super person, the superpowered person, but even in the fictional area of superpowered heroes, not everybody is perfect. I mean, Batman and Superman, they had fights with each other because of various different belief systems. So even in the real world, I can think of a lot of people who have had great influence on me, still continue to have influence on me. And I would believe that they are superheroes, not that they have superpowers, but because of their intellect, their empathy, their understanding, the impact they have on the world, on society around, can make a huge difference. Yeah. So I do see a parallel.
And give us one or two names, and what did you learn from them, or the impact they had?
So let me start with my latest, which was a person called Satya Nadella, who is the head of Microsoft. Just imagine I was near the end of my career, and my professional career, not just from a Microsoft perspective. And then I get to meet a person and work for a person who had a profound impact over the last 3 to 4 years of my working career. You talked about it in the opening statement about the importance of empathy and vulnerability. I think Shiv perhaps talked about that. It's important to have empathy, to be vulnerable, and that was something which my generation of working professionals we didn't believe in. We believed that as leaders, you were the gunslinging cowboy who knew everything. You were the sheriff in town, and you basically sort of took care of all the problems. With your guns and with your quick wit, and you were on top of every situation. And here was a person who basically said, "Look, I don't have all the answers. Can we talk? Can we understand?" And he was willing to listen to suggestions. I think he also had this profound impact on me in terms of, you always believe that the best way to run a company is to go hire the smartest people, and then give them free rein, empower them. And if they do their job, great, otherwise you fire them. And here was a person who says, look, that's not the way it should work. Every human being has the potential to grow. You must give him an environment where he can not only flourish and learn, but he should also have the ability to make a mistake and learn from those mistakes. So we need to create a learning organization, not an organization where you just get people, the smartest of people, and then let them go out. So I think from that perspective, if you see what he has achieved, both from a company perspective, both from a global perspective in areas like privacy and security, in terms of the values and the culture, I consider him a superhero. So that's
You're one of the few worked with a lot of pioneering guys in technology like Scott McNeely, Steve Ballmer, Ed Zander, Vinod Khosla, and of course Satya Nadella. What is that one thing that they all have in common?
I think one of the most important is the ability to look around corners. If you look at them, that they have their vision in terms of which way the world is heading, which way, where would people want to buy solutions? That's their ability. And that's why, especially if you're a product or a technology company like a Google or a Amazon or actually Amazon may not be a good this thing, but if you look at Google, if you look at Facebook, you look at any of these companies which have been Microsoft, which have been extremely successful, it's been the CEOs have been technology leaders. They have been able to look around corners. That's what you need. You need the ability to look and take a few bets, because that's what makes your company great. It's your products, it's your technology. And that's how you innovate, how you create new kinds of technology which can benefit the world. So I think looking at vision and looking around corners is very, very critical. The second, and if I'd include somebody like Scott McNealy, he was an engineer, but he was also an MBA. So was Steve Ballmer. He was an engineer and an MBA. But if you look at Bill Gates, if you look at Satya Nadella, and if you look at Digital Equipment Corporation, there was the CEO at that time was Gordon. I've forgotten the first name, but he was a hardcore engineer. Digital is the company which invented the mini computer. It is because of their foresight. The other one is all of them have what I call clarity, their ability to define the objectives of the company, the strategy of the company, the culture of the company, the values, and be able to communicate that. That clarity in terms of when you have to decide which way you're going to go, they're all provided that clarity of thinking. And the other part is their ability to energize. The Steve Ballmer and Scott McNealy, they were very, very similar. They actually had very similar backgrounds. There was just 1 year difference between them, both at Stanford and at Harvard. And yet, the way they could energize their people was amazing. And then you have Satya, who can energize people, but through his empathy, which is different. But they all have that capability of being able to energize. So I would say vision, clarity of thinking, the ability to energize people, I think, and to make their company successful, I think has been their core characteristics.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anu, you remember the line we were talking about Bhaskar having said that he got to be the best, and you wanted to ask him about that, right?
So speaking of memorable quotes, and he was talking about, what are these big guys who built companies had in common as a leader.
Right.
Let's talk about Bhaskar as the leader. Bhaskar, one of your quotes is a lot of your colleagues remember you for you saying you got to be the best, believe in yourself. Now, of all the things a person can say, why say that? What magic do these words have?
It's I've always, for a large part of my career, I thought you had to be extremely smart, and you had to be very capable with lots of resources, and you just had people around. And I found out that when I reflected back on my first 20 years of my life, and then I started actually realizing that really it is people and culture which actually eats strategy for breakfast. It's uncanny.
Yeah.
And that realization came a little late, mid of my career. But that's what really sort of was sort of an aha moment, that it is people which make a difference. And in Sun Microsystems, I actually saw that unfolding in my eyes. When I came in to start Sun Microsystems in India, we were only about 14 or 15 people. And we grew that business in something like 10 years to about $250 million. And, it was a pretty large organization, a couple of hundred people, sales and marketing. We had an engineering division. And what really made the difference was people. In fact, and that is something which and the culture, it made every one of the people there Superman. And I think that's got proven, because even after Sun got taken over by Oracle, and the industry kept evolving. Today, a lot of the Sun people are in many different technology companies across India and abroad, and a lot of them are actually CEOs of those companies. So to me, it really was a true test that it is people which make a difference, and it is culture which actually creates the ability to sustain success over a long period of time.
True, absolutely. I don't know if you're a fan of the Avengers or not, but you wanted your own Avengers kind of a dream team, the best talent in the industry, I believe, and you wanted to create one. Is that true?
Yeah, when I came back from Singapore to start Sun Microsystems in India, I think it was around 96, 97. I spread the word. Those days there wasn't LinkedIn, there wasn't Facebook, there was, just rudimentary email. Something called Hotmail was available at that point of time. And I spread the word. It wasn't the Avengers. I was talking about, I wanted to create a team like the Harlem Globetrotters.
Okay.
And that means, huge amount of talent, lots of, very good talent who would be the, the most successful basketball team. It was only a few years later I sort of understood that the Harlem Globetrotters, although they had the best talent, they never actually won any championship. So I actually modified my belief thereafter, saying that I didn't want just individual talent. I wanted talent which could collaborate with each other. And that also was what made Sun click, because it was the team. It was not just specific individuals. And I think it's the environment which created people who were superpowered. So it was the overall, the organization, the culture, that created, every individual became sort of like a superhero. So it was not that they were superheroes to start with, they became superheroes in that environment.
Yeah, and many superheroes working together and collaborating can be tremendously impactful, right?
Absolutely.
But you also said at one point of time that one Sun guy is equal to 10 IBM guys.
Yeah, I think I still stand by that.
You had a team like that. I mean, it's unbelievable. Of course, many of them have become industry leaders as well.
Absolutely.
But coming back, you also did say something different. You said, play hard and party hard and be the best.
I guess in those days you didn't have work from home, so you could do all three at the same time. So therefore, when we were at work, we were very competitive. We were very clear about our goals and objectives, and everybody focused on making things happen and moving in the right direction. And then in the evenings, we'd say, let's get together and let's enjoy ourselves. And it was not just about the people in the office. We included our spouses. So in Sun, for example, the spouses, they used to call themselves the sunflowers. So we used to go with our sunflowers, and then we used to go out and, whether it was off-sites or whether it was just getting together in the evening, that bonding and camaraderie was very, very important. So that was the play part of it, that, you also get time to let down your hair. And it was with families, and it was in a much more social kind of an environment. So I think that's really what we meant, that, play hard. And
I was wondering where work was coming into the equation.
So I think play refers to work and party refers to social.
That's right. Playing hard is all about work.
Bhaskar, listening to you, technology becomes such a big deal, right? And such a pervasive force in your life. But see, your passion has always been in science and technology, what you follow, where you work, and yet you started your career with DCM as a management trainee. It doesn't add up.
Yeah, you got to understand when the year I graduated was 1972. The microprocessor hadn't been invented. Computers were basically, used punch cards. The largest computer we used to have in India was an IBM 360, which was in Icon, but it was, inside an air-conditioned environment, and people with white coats used to operate those computers, right? This is the year when I graduated. So there was not much opportunities for computing kind of jobs. IT didn't exist. TCS was just, an imagination, or not an imagination, was just underway at that point of time in Bombay. So basically, most of the jobs where either you went with what they call the British, UK companies which were all in Calcutta, British companies, founders.
ICM.
Yeah, they were. No. I'm talking about Metal Box and ICI, ITC. ICL and IBM were the only two computer companies, but they were not really computers the way we know it. They were unit record punch card kind of a machine company. And then the other kinds of companies were the Indian companies, which were like TCM, Hindustan Lever, Tata's, which had great management training programs and very well recognized at that point of time. And then otherwise you could have chosen for a some sort of a job in an Indian company, working on in the engineering field inside a factory. And I actually decided when I passed out from IIT that I would do at least a couple of years of working in a factory, and then I would go and do my MTech somewhere. But as luck would have it, I applied to DCM for 2 jobs. One was in research and development, and they had just set up a R&D establishment. And this was primarily focused on electronics, computing, and other areas. And I got rejected. And the second job I applied for in DCM was that of a management trainee, and that I got. So at that time, the salary was very high compared to any other salary you could get. So finally, you can say that fate decided, and money is what motivated me to take up that DCM job.
But
so I can tell you one thing: whatever our best intentions, whatever our education, training, and whatever our best intention, nothing ever goes to plan. So one of the things which you must learn as a professional is the ability to take quick decisions and the ability to roll with the wave.
Yep.
If you don't, then you'll miss opportunities as you go along.
Fantastic. But I'm coming back to Sun Microsystems, where you worked for 12 years. I believe you broke the record of never having missed the yearly target all these 12 years. And is that true? And how did you achieve that? Is that based on your motto of play hard, party hard as well?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, slight correction, we did miss our numbers one year, which was in 2001 when you had the dot-com bust. But that was the only year we missed our numbers. And that too, we missed it by 0.3%. That means we did 99.7.
Wow.
That was the worst year we ever had from a budget perspective. But all the other years, we achieved the numbers. And I think the secret to sustained success is really, like I mentioned, it's people, it's culture. It's about not just working in the present, but at least always making sure that you are looking at the possibilities of the future. So most organizations in India, 90% of the organization is focused on the present. I mean, I've seen this in every company, even the companies I'm on the board of. And everybody is just worried about what am I going to do today? What am I going to do in the quarter? What am I going to do in the month or the year?
Yep.
Yeah. But I think successful organization, you have to have at least 25 to 30% of the organization working into the future, which is mid period, and at least 10% of the organization must be worrying about the future, what happens thereafter. In fact, given the kind of volatility in the marketplace, that 10% who is worried about the future needs to think about a future when nothing is certain. It is where you have to question, are you in the right business? Are you selling the right kinds of products and services? Are you sure that you have providing value to your customers? You have to redefine. Everything is up for open. So it's, basically you have to have an organization which can do all these 3 things in these 3 time periods at the same time. Because then you're not only taking care of the present, you're also taking care of the future. And just to give you an example, when I was a salesperson and every year I used to win a big deal, I realized at that point of time that next year I will have to do 1.25% more because my boss is going to increase my target by 25%. So I was already figuring out where that 25% extra the next year is going to come from. And that's the way I wanted all my people to think that, you just don't think about the present. Don't, put your head in the ground and say that, look, let's worry about today. You have to worry about tomorrow and you have to worry about the day after.
That's a great piece of advice. I talk to people all the time and industry leaders, and I can tell you, everybody's focusing, many of them are focusing on the present, because it's all about cash flow, etc. But certainly you have to keep that future in mind. 30% of your focus has to be there. I mean, in terms of people and effort and thinking, because companies are made for perpetuity, not just for 1 year or 10 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, Bhaskar, I believe listening to you, I am also reminded that you were one of your colleagues tell me, you were one of the few people who once made a wrong hire would own up to it and correct it.
Yeah, you know, I'm again, this is something which perhaps I have not seen very many people do, but I used to take bets on people, you know, and, you know, frankly, you know, you can be very safe and take and hire people who, you know, by all means, everybody would say that, look, this is the right kind of a person. And I used to have a rule that even whether it was Sun or Microsoft or even in digital, that there would have to be at least 3 sets of people who would review a candidate before we would make an offer. And if one person said no, then we would decline on making an offer. But there were a few cases where I actually took a decision that I would hire people who could be considered as mavericks. And in a sense, I overrode a few people. And some played out because they were really very good, but they didn't last the full tenure. 3 years, they did very well for the company, and then they didn't fit in, so they had to move on. But it is one thing. The other thing which I've learned is that if you've taken a wrong decision, then don't wait for 3 years. Take a corrective action as quickly as possible. The ones who stayed on for 3 years did really very well, but there were a few which were really wrong decisions. Take that decision quickly. You know, it takes you to hire a talent. You know, it can take you close to about 6 months, and then if you give him another 6 months and it turns out to be a disaster, you've actually lost 2 years. 6 months, and another 6 months, and another 6 months to get somebody. Therefore,
I can tell you,
much more careful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would still go ahead and hire a few. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I believe this happened in a conference or in a meeting when actually you owned up to that, which is very few leaders actually own up to the fact that you made a mistake in hiring. And I'm being in the business of, you know, search, and I realize how tough it is to find one good guy. Sometimes it's, you know, I keep saying we've got 1.3 billion people in this country, but to get one good guy, you know, is the toughest thing on this earth. So,
you know, Bhaskar, before you ask him, Bhaskar, you also did something that not many people do. Leaders don't build strong leaders. They don't build succession. You pioneered that concept. You also pioneered the concept of channels, partner with channels in those days. This is the gold standard which was adopted by the industry, and it still continues. Tell us a bit about both of these things.
The first one was channels, and the first point was
succession planning. You know, preparing for your retirement, preparing, you know, hiring people who could take over from you.
Yeah. So you know, in Sun, there was a point of time when I had identified 3 levels of succession for me. That means if I left, then who would be the next guy? And there were a choice of a few people. And then there was another set of people who would be future ready in 5 years' time. Mm-hmm. And then we were continuing to identify other talent, which could be extreme talent for even later. So succession planning was never a problem. So when you know, Sun asked me to go to the US, my decision in terms of who was going to be taking over from me, I had already sort of initiated that process. Not only had we identified a couple of potential successors, but we had also, I had given the person who was the most strongest, I had made him the chief operating officer for a period of a year before I actually moved on. So therefore, you know, for me, succession planning was actually very important. And it's the same thing in Microsoft. Even after 3 years in Microsoft, we had internal candidates, and then we also looked externally, and I shortlisted one candidate and were just waiting for the opportune time when I would be moving on and that person could be triggered. And that's the way it actually worked out. So, you know, we had 2 years multiple identified candidates, so that when I decided to move on, that triggered the whole succession plan. So succession plan is very, very critical, very important. You need to spend a lot of time, and you need to constantly scan the environment for good people. And not because you had a position, but because you realize that they would be of immense value to the company. So I used to spend lots of times on interviewing people. As far as channels is concerned, to me, it was not so much about a channel play as an ecosystem play. So whichever company you are in, you are part of an ecosystem, and how you can add to that ecosystem such that the value of the ecosystem is greater than your own value is what makes you grow even faster. See, the standard rule of the thumb is that you can get 33 1/3 market share very easily in most businesses if you're the leader in that business. There's lots of companies which have that capability.
Yeah.
There is another 1/3 which is sort of up for grabs, but the last 1/3 is divvied up by multiple people, which is going to be very difficult for you to get. So therefore, if you want to grow your market share, the only way, if you want to grow your size of your business, really one of the most effective ways is to grow the market. So in the case of Sun, we had very high market share. Same thing in Microsoft. So the only thing we could do was to increase the market size, because we realized that trying to take market share was actually too expensive, and it was very low possibility. So go for the next 1/3, but at the same time try to see if you can grow the market faster. So ecosystems is what helps us to do that, where you use external resources to really help you. I remember once that one of my channel guys was telling the Wipro guys that you must structure yourself like Sun, and you should have this kind of organization, and these are the number of salespeople. I said, don't tell them that. We are partners together. We have a common goal, and you must leave it for them to decide how they want to do it, because their DNA is equally valuable as our DNA. I said, their DNA has Mr. Premji. If you have Mr. Premji selling for you, you can never have that capability. I mean, he can get you to markets which you would never have been able to get to otherwise. And I said, therefore, you must have a unity of purpose, a common strategy, but you must allow their DNA to help them successful. Don't try and modify their DNA. So that's was very critical and important for me. That and the ecosystem, creation of a much bigger ecosystem.
Yeah, I don't know how you can ever modify anybody's DNA anyway, but I believe you pioneered
I tell you, some of multinationals, they are, they can be, the word is anal in terms of trying to force people to behave like them.
Never works, and it will never last. Because you got to be authentic, you got to be yourself. At the end of the day, I mean, that's what lasts finally. But tell me, you did, what Anu was talking about is this pioneered the concept of partnering with channels, which was adopted by competition at that point of time at Sun Microsystems. You've done something dramatically different at that point of time.
Yeah, so I think it was, when I sort of started Sun Microsystems here in India, at that time we had a single distributor, that was Wipro. So Wipro was Sun, and anybody who thought of Sun always thought of Wipro. So here was 17 or 18 guys who came in initially to grow the business, to make the business. And therefore, we had to appoint other distributors, because if Wipro was the only sole distributors, then why would TCS sell our products? Why would Infosys want to work with us? So we had to create a multiplicity of different kinds of channels, system integrators, distributors, value-added resellers. So therefore, it was important for us to create all those different capabilities, those different kinds of partners to solve the different kind of problems for our customers. It's not easy, because you have to decide what the partners will do, what will you do. And one thing was very clear, that in both the companies, whether it was Microsoft or whether it was in the case of Sun, it was very clear that the large part of the market was going to be done by partners, and we would only focus on account management on a few large accounts.
Okay. Getting on to the lighter side, at Sun Microsystem, and you worked for many years with Scott McNeely, and I remember you once telling me about the story with the burgers, about what he loves to have. Why don't you talk about that?
Okay, so the first time Scott came to India after I had taken over as the country managing director, I actually spoke to his secretary and a few other people, and they said that, look, Scott, he loves burgers. He only has his burgers, and he prefers McDonald's burgers, but for him, that's his staple diet. So we said no problem. So his first visit was to New Delhi, and he was staying at the Oberoi's, and at that time, the general manager of the Oberoi's was a Mr. Ratan Kaswani, one of the best hoteliers I've ever met. And Ratan says, don't worry, our chef knows how to make a mean burger, so we'll have create the right kind of burgers for him. He'll surely love it. And if that doesn't work, there's a McDonald's at Khan Market. We'll get the burger from there. So first thing in the morning, meet up with Scott and we brief him, and he had a burger, and we had our regular breakfast. Then we had a series of meetings, and at lunchtime there was a big CII meeting where we had CEOs from all the different large organizations in the country. And then at the end of that, we had a sit-down dinner, and we all had this wonderful Indian meal, and Scott had a burger. And then after that, we went to meet the President of India, Dr. Abdul Kalam. Finished that, went to the airport, got into a private jet, and Taj served us burgers. So while we were on the flight, Scott asked me that, Bhaskar, in India, you guys don't eat anything other than burgers. So I said, yeah, we have a great cuisine. He said, why are you serving me burgers? So I said, that's what your secretary and everybody else told me. You love a Coke and you love a burger. He says, I have spent a number of years, 4-5 years, with Vinod Khosla. We were roommates. I love Indian food. So from Chennai onwards, we started giving him tikka masala, we gave him naan, we gave him kulfi, and he loved it.